Picture this. Years of scrimping, planning, and saving have finally put you in the position to own a classic 911. You've spent hundreds of hours digging through the forums, scouring Facebook Marketplace, and watching clean examples transact on Cars and Bids. And finally, you've found the one for you. Or is it? Sellers aren't always truthful, and without the expert knowledge of a technician, your big investment may be riskier than you understand. So, to help you on your 911 purchasing journey, we borrowed one of our friends from Porsche specialist Butzigear to take you through everything you need to know when considering an air-cooled 911.
All right, so we finally got this Carrera in the shop. We're here to do a PPI on it. We want to kind of touch on what this car needs specifically, but also air-cooled cars in general. If you own one, if you're looking to buy one, kind of what you should really be looking at. When we do these types of inspections, what we like to do is kind of start outside, do a walk around, check the car as it presents itself. We're going to move inside, we're going to check controls, we're going to go under the front lid, look around, and then we're going to go to the engine bay. One of the reasons I like to do this and not just start on the bottom is I can get an idea of what I should really be focusing on underneath the car. So it's pretty important. Start up top, ease in, see what you got. First things first, we're going to get in this car, we're going to do a light check, we're going to do some control checks, so let's get to it. One of the biggest things inside these cars, we talk about it all the time, it's super important, is your interface to the vehicle. So basically everything you touch. Is the seat loose? Does the steering wheel have play? This one has just a slight bit, it's not bad. I don't feel a lot in the steering. I'm checking my clutch pedal free play. This pedal feels good. This car has a good transmission, it's hydraulic clutch, so it's got nice return. Brakes, firm. They do pump up a little bit with a few pumps, so it might be due for a flush. Accelerator pedal feels good. Shifter's nice, not a lot there. So let's do our light check. I'm gonna switch everything on. We'll check high beams. I have a brake pedal depressor here. We're gonna check that. And we're gonna do our walk around with our lights on. So we look good here. It's like we got our low beams, that's good. Let's get high beams. Got those, see if these fogs work. High beams off. Fogs. Let's see, we got the one. We got two, that's impressive. There's usually one out. The outside of this car is really nice. I don't see a lot aesthetically. That door check is good. This door check is good. That's a plus. We got our third brake light. We got everything in the back. We got license plate lights, brake lights, reverse lights, and side markers, and turn signals. So, excellent. All right, so next we're gonna move on to the rest of our inspection up top, which is basically gonna be front trunk. We'll go up a little bit to do engine bay. I like to pop this, see what's going on in there. Just open everything up. It's good to operate everything in the car. I will generally do more control checks inside. I like to do that on the road when the car is running. Things look pretty good in here. I don't like this aftermarket gas cap. That'd be the first thing I'd get rid of. Seal's not horrible. No real rust in here. It's got the washer fluid cap, which is also a plus. Sometimes those disappear. The lid shocks are actually, they've been replaced. They're decent on this. Don't get mouse trapped in your 911, it happens. I could probably do an hour video just on batteries in these cars. The finer points are, do you have a battery hold down? This one does. Do you have a battery vent? So this car has the vent, it's just not hooked up. There's no tube here. Some of these early cars didn't have the vent. Some of them have the vent, it's been disconnected, it's crushed. These cars sit, we tend them. So when we're tending, we're off-gassing acid, and the acid, if it has nowhere to go, is eating through your trunk pan. So this one's not bad. There's not a lot of acid down here, maybe a little bit, but I would recommend retrofitting a battery vent if you don't have one. The other thing is on this B plus terminal here, there's a couple of small wires. And if you look at this one right here, if you can zoom in, guys, this is literally coming out of the butt connector. Somebody already repaired these. We all know about dead batteries in 911s. These cars get jump started a lot. When you're hooking clamps on here, you get stuff like this. This will shut your car down. Some of it looks like alarm stuff, but there's the Porsche ones here. You really want to look at all this stuff. I will also pop these fuse blocks off here. You want to look in here. Sometimes there's a lot of aftermarket junk hooked up. Other times these fuses are just super corroded. Some of these fuses have been in here for 40 years, 30 years. You just want to look at them. They get corroded on the bottom, like this one, dissimilar metal corrosion. You'll actually lose voltage through there. I've also had these fuse boxes break, so you can have broken things here. Some cars are missing this panel entirely. People have crap in here. They're driving around. It hits this. It's very delicate. So definitely look in here. This looks pretty good. Some of the fuses are old, but it's not bad. I don't see a lot of corrosion on here. The other thing, I'm going to grab my flashlight. Mice love 911s. 911s don't love mice, but you want to look for them. I've always said about 8 out of 10 Porsches have had or will have mice at some point. You want to look in here. This doesn't look like I'm seeing anything. Let's see up here. They like this area in particular. You'll usually find acorns and other things we won't mention. This really looks pretty good up here. Brake fluid's a little dark. Looks like it's been flushed at some point. That's good, but I would recommend a flush. All this stuff, this is common in old 911s. Take it out if you have it. Just get rid of it. It's alarm. I'm not seeing too much evidence of critters. Maybe a little bit at one point. Nothing bad. There's no odor. That's good. It's got the strut tower brace. That's nice. Nice little addition here. This car actually still has the air compressor. These work forever. They're excellent. It's got the spare, which is nice, the toolkit and the jack, so it's really a complete car. Again, I just happen to know that this car has the AC disconnected. You got your front condenser fan in here. It's 50-50 whether that's gonna work. But if this doesn't work on your car, unplug it, because that can start a fire. So we raised the car up a little bit. This will make it just a little more efficient to look in the back here, so we're not bending over. Ton of stuff back here to look at. Like to just do a cursory and kind of see what we got. First thing I note, this AC compressor is disconnected. It spins, not sure why that's like that. Again, always looking for any kind of debris back here, rodent stuff if I have to look at anything more carefully. This doesn't look too bad at all. Belt's not bad, that's good. Gonna do a little fan bearing check. That feels good. Looks like somebody put a high flow filter in there, that's fine. Definitely pretty heavily modified here on the crankcase vent system. I'm not sure why that's like that, but not necessarily a problem. You really want to touch on fuel lines back here. This actually looks like it had a replacement set at one point, but these are looking a little crusty under here. You don't want to mess with gas on your air-cooled engine, so definitely look at all your fuel hoses. I have a broken connector here on the cylinder head temp sensor. Almost looks like it was a glued repair. This will shut your car down. You're gonna want to fix that. It looks like even the crank sensor back here might be also broken. They get very brittle. Again, air cooled. There's heat back here. People working in here, if you just bump those, they crack and break. So it's a good thing to look at. Looks like somebody did a fuel filter at some point. The wires are looking a little crummy. I got some cracked insulation back here. It looks like a lot of it's just the heat shielding, but I'd probably be doing a set of wires in this car. We kind of like to do, when we PPI a car, it's always gonna be safety stuff, then maintenance, then your wants. So that's really the order. These heater blowers back here, these mess up all the time. Again, I usually will check this on the road when the car is hot. This being a Carrera, it's got footwell blowers. They will not work if this doesn't work. So if your car has no heat, start with this. Checking the throttle boot here. It's hard, but it doesn't appear to be cracked, so that's fine. Oil leaks, this thing looks pretty dry up top. Usually most of the oil leaks are going to be downstairs. I can tell this thing's had valve cover gaskets. That's good. I'm going to pop the cap off here in a minute. We're going to check the rotor and the distributor, but otherwise, not too much to report up here. One more thing we want to touch on in here, guys, is the distributor. Cap and rotor, but also the distributor itself. This being a Carrera or computer-controlled DME, there's no adjustment on this distributor. That doesn't mean they can't wear out. I've already popped this cap here. Inside, doesn't look bad, but if I'm doing wires, I'm doing a cap. This distributor has a little bit of play. I can grab this rotor. It moves up and down probably 3/8 of an inch, which is kind of a lot. The rotor itself is really stuck on there, and I can tell nobody's serviced this thing. There's a lot of rust in this distributor. The nice thing about computer-controlled distributors is you can pop this up and see your weights. On the older cars, you had a reluctor wheel in there, so you couldn't see any of this. What's great about this is you can get in here, you can clean this, and you can grease it without removing the distributor. In the distributor shaft is a small felt pad. The old-timey trick is you take that felt pad out and you put 2 drops of oil, just regular engine oil in there. It'll keep things lubricated. This looks like the day Porsche put it in. So it could use some distributor service. I would probably send this out for a rebuild. There's too much play here. I had a 911S a few weeks ago. It was so bad, the rotor came out of contact with the cap and was actually milling out the cap. So check your distributors. Good, so we're up in the air now. Most important thing on your car, tires. These tires here, I got a DOT of 05. They're not super dry rotted, but you need tires. It's your interface to the road with the vehicle. It's the single most important thing on the car. Replace your tires, just do it, and alignment. This is kind of, I call it the business side of the vehicle. There's more to look at over here. Oil tank back in the wheel well here. This one is just starting to seep a little bit around the sensor gasket. Not a big deal, it'd be low on my list of priorities, but it is seeping. It's something to look at. The more important thing is these oil lines. This one's wet. This is typical. If you're looking to buy a 911 or you own a 911, check your oil lines. They're hard as a rock. We call this the S-hose down here on the tank, going to the cooler to the bottom of the tank. This one actually, I can compress it. It feels pretty good, but it is damp. It's likely getting wet from this. Up at the front over here. So your oil thermostat is here. It's kind of tough to see, but it's back here behind the quarter panel. These lines don't look too bad. I wouldn't be too worried about replacing these. The bigger issue I have is this bushing in here for the torsion bar. This is worn. They're all worn. Nobody replaces these. You got to re-index. You're doing a lot of work to get this done, but there's a huge gap at the bottom, and the bar is pushing up into the metal bracket over that bushing. What happens with those bushings is they wear out so bad the rubber becomes part of the metal, and now all of a sudden the bar is cocked up. So this is one of those kind of things where you got to treat your suspension as a full system and just go at it with everything, get your parts. Moving up. A lot of things that happen when these 911s get put on lifts is the oil lines get crushed under here. This doesn't look bad up here. I usually see it up at the front lift point. They run very close. If you don't have the right lift pad like FCP does, you're going to crush those. So let's move up there and look. We'll look at these better when it's up. I'm not really seeing anything there. It looks pretty good. I did note we're just starting to get a seep at the front oil cooler up here. It's not bad. Again, it'd probably be low on my list. I would take care of the bigger items first, but this is definitely starting to seep up here. One of the things we always want to do on these cars is pull down this pan. This is kind of a protective cover for your fuel system. I've pre-loosened these. It's just two 17mm nuts and a couple of Allen's 8s, but you want to pull this down. Be careful, there may be some debris up there. One leaf, there you go. So under here, what we have is we have our fuel pump and some fuel lines. This actually looks to be an original or early replacement pump. It's not wet, that's good. but the supply line is cracking, so that definitely needs to be done. It's pretty heavily dry rotted. If I'm doing this line, I'm putting a pump in it. They're inexpensive. It's one of the biggest things. You'll get a gas odor, you'll get a puddle. Just replace it, don't mess around. The fuel lines here are another big one. They're all dry rotted. So the deal with these lines is it's actually like a Tecaland plastic line that runs through here. They're not fun to replace. It's not terrible. I have also, if you cut the crimps off the end here, you can just do the rubber. That's acceptable. Just don't use screw clamps, use a crimp clamp. But these lines aren't that bad to do. They pull out, and they pull out in this direction. So I would definitely be recommending a fuel pump and lines on this car. Manual rack, not a lot to go wrong. There's a lot with suspension on these cars. We're going to be getting into that here. It's really got to be treated as a system. So when we talk about our interface with the car, it's everything we interface in the vehicle, basically any hand controls, but then it's also the car's interface to the road. You really want to mesh those things because that's the magic of a 911. When you get those two things right, that's where the magic really starts to happen. This car has original tie rods in it. They've got the rubber in there. You want to get turbo tie rods in there. We had a leaking shock here. It doesn't have play yet. Let's see. It doesn't have play yet, but it is seeping. Wheel bearing check on these cars. These wheel bearings are adjustable. It's just rock a little bit. These are actually pretty tight. The other thing I like to do on pretty much every car, spin all four wheels. And I'm gonna look at a few things here. Number one, I wanna see if the caliper's dragging. Number two, I wanna see if the wheel has hop. And number three, I also wanna see if I have tire out of round. These tires are shot, so I'm not really focusing on those. I got a little click there. I'm not sure what that is. That could be wheel bearing stuff, but there's a bit of an audible noise there. The moral of this is spin all four. You really want to see what you got going on there. If you got a dragging caliper, a hop in a wheel, or a noise, that's going to come right out in this. We like to kind of do these suspensions complete. So I don't spend a ton of time checking ball joints. I look at rubber. They need everything. They all need everything at this point. They're so old. You've got dry rot starting here on these bushings. You're going to want to do new ball joints if you're doing a control arm. You got a leaking shock. You're going to be doing 4 shock inserts. It's like if you got these tie rods, I'm not even really checking for play. You need tie rods. So it's like you really want to treat these things as a system and get everything replaced. If you are going to do shocks, do your upper mounts. Just really do every single item. They're old. The rubber's old. If it's not cracked, you've lost elasticity due to time. You want to get all that stuff replaced. It's really where I say it all the time, the worst driving 911s still drive great, but you're missing a lot. So you really want to treat it as a system and just do everything. I don't see too much else going on up here. Maybe a little bit of rub here on this tank. I'm not sure what's going on there. It might have just been driven aggressively. No big deal. You got a lot of AC lines and things that run up through here. Some of it actually looks like it's been replaced, so I'm not sure why the compressor's disconnected, but not too much else to look at over here. The oil cooler looks dry. That's good. So my biggest items here are going to be the suspension stuff, all the bushings, the arms, the tie rods, the shocks. See what this little click is, and then deal with this fuel system first. I would definitely safety first. So take care of that. All right, so we're moving on to the back here. We'll keep going with the suspension stuff. We got a little bit of grease throw by on these boots. The clamps do loosen up over time. I kind of spun this. I don't really see a lot of cracks. You're gonna be doing a boot set, so don't mess around. One thing I do want to point at is if you do end up needing calipers, be prepared to likely have to do these hard lines. They typically corrode a lot. This being a newer air-cooled car, they don't look horrible, but be prepared for that. The biggest thing that gets overlooked on these cars is these trailing arm bushings. And they're way up in here, and these are absolutely torched. I mean, they look like they're the oldest rubber on the car. We like to do Heim joints in here because it really doesn't sacrifice ride quality, and you will never have to touch them again. The rubber bushings are fine. They're actually a little harder to put in, I think. The Heims go in really nice. Same thing with engine transmission mounts. That stuff's ancient. You can do just the stock stuff or you can do the RS mounts, but all this stuff kind of will firm up the car and not sacrifice any ride quality. Moving on, kind of transmission. I have a little bit of wetness here. That's kind of normal. I see it quite a bit. It could be drain plug stuff. It looks like it's pretty low to the bottom. This diff seal's leaking a little bit, but not too bad. But this will leave a few drips on your floor. Throttle belt crank, sometimes these have a little bit of play even when they're new. This one's super tight, so that's nice. You have this copper braided engine ground here. Again, newer air-cooled car, this really isn't bad, but sometimes these are hanging on by a thread. So definitely check this ground strap. If it's crappy, I think they're about 20 bucks. So it's an easy thing to do. These sway bar brackets, these are known to actually break off the chassis. On this passenger side over here, I've got a little bit of fresh white spray paint, so somebody probably did a repair on this. That's pretty typical. It's good to see that somebody actually fixed it, because a lot of times they come in and you'll have a broken link or you'll have a broken bracket here. We see that a lot. So moving back here, this has a little bit of an oil leak here. You'd go, oh, that looks like a rear main seal. What I am noticing on this car is there's a good bit of oil coming down from up top. You might also misdiagnose this as an oil cooler. What happens on these, there's an oil pressure switch up top that's notorious for leaking. There's also a thermostat O-ring. We're talking about $15 in parts, but a good bit of labor to replace because it's kind of buried on the back of the top of the engine. But when these things leak, it's one of the worst oil leaks you can have. It makes a mess. So this one's on its way. You could also have a rear main seal leak here, but you always want to start high with your oil leak repairs, work your way down. It's a bit of a process determining exactly what's leaking on these engines because it can be a little bit misleading. The best thing to do is just clean it all up, drive it, and see where it's coming from. But just experience tells me it needs some parts up top. So that's a relatively easy repair. You just gotta reach around the back of the, kind of bear hug the intake, and you can replace both of those items up top. There is a a breather housing up on top of the case. That's known to leak too, but I have a feeling this is likely thermostat O-ring and oil pressure switch. Longest part of the video, oil leaks on a 911 engine. There's a lot to cover here. The typical culprits, let's start in the middle at the front. So this has got a lot of wetness. You're likely looking at front seal there, intermediate cover, and the biggest culprit, number 8 main bearing O-ring. Not much you can do about that without splitting the case. We have a few methods, but it makes sense to kind of take care of that stuff. Good to also do your engine mounts when you're doing that, because that's all going to be a part. I'm not too worried. There's a little bit of oil here, center of the case. I have a feeling it's coming down from the back here as we're driving. Working out oil return tubes. These are actually billet tubes, which it looks like probably this engine had maybe a top end done at some point. They're not collapsibles, but they're also not stock. They look to be dry, which is good. So chain boxes and chain housings, chain covers rather, these look decent. They're not really wet. I have some wetness on this one coming down from the back. The problem with these is it could be your O-ring behind this cover. Also, Porsche likes to, in a lot of areas where there's plugs on the engine, like over here, in the back here, and on the back of the cover, they used an epoxy to kind of seal that, and over time, that epoxy just chips right off. So there's not a lot you can do about these ones when it's in. These are exposed. There's one over there that's higher. This one you can do, this one you can do. You could sand that off in just a little bit of JB Weld. It's very common to think you're fixing an oil leak on these only to drive the car and find out it's still leaking oil, and it's because it's coming from one of these harder places. The same thing kind of applies out here. Easy to do valve cover gaskets. These were done, but there's still wetness over here. The bigger thing is really these actual cam towers. The sealant that's in there can go bad. Not much you can do about that unless you're prepared to take your engine apart. But the other thing I want to talk about is a lot of people will do valve cover gaskets thinking I have valve cover gaskets, or you did valve cover gaskets, it looks like your gaskets are leaking, is rocker arms. We're starting to see a lot of rocker arms that are leaking right past the arm. Those arms seal in there. They kind of expand when you tighten them. Porsche on their race engines used an O-ring. We like to, when we take this apart to do an engine, put the O-rings in there, It's cheap insurance. It's going to seal up those bores. So if you have a persistent oil leak over here, you got to check your rocker arms. You can see some of them with a light and a mirror or a bore scope. There's one exposed on the back of the engine. And also when you take the cover off, you'll see there's pockets that are actually outside the engine technically. Look in those areas for wetness. If you see that, it's likely your rocker arms. Just wrapping up the final inspection on this Carrera here with our friends at FCP Euro. We touched on a lot of points on this car. If you need parts, FCP Euro's definitely got you covered. They're going to be doing some DIYs on this exact car, which is really cool. And if you're not comfortable doing some of this work yourself, you can always check us out over at Butzigear. We touched on a lot of points, as I said. Get out there, check out your cars, and make sure you drive them.